Welcome to the It Matters podcast. I'm your host, Walter Perez, and let's dive in as we help you grow your mindset and elevate your leadership. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the It Matters podcast. I am so excited for this episode today because I have my friend Vanessa Iceton on the show, and I'm super pumped to introduce you to you guys as she is a registered psychologist with the College of Alberta Psychologists, and I'm pumped because she's been able to do some pretty amazing things, and one of those things is that she is the proud owner and CEO of Pearl Psychological. As a registered psychologist, she is wholeheartedly believes in the transformative power of healing and personal growth. And one thing that I really loved when I was hearing more about her and what she does is her core values. And check this out. She values wisdom, integrity, purity, and serenity. I love that. Her whole focus is to help individuals heal, energize, and become aware of their inner strengths. And so I am very pumped and excited to have her on here. But before we get going, I want to just give you a quick thought here, everybody, that the conversation that Vanessa and I are about to have is exactly that, a conversation. And it's not meant for you to grab this and take it as a therapy or as advice. This is meant for us to just give you some information, and it's the opinion of both Vanessa and I. And so if you're going to need help, if you're looking for extra help, you're going to be able to have Vanessa's information in the show notes. And if you have a personal concern, we definitely encourage you to seek professional help. And so keep that on mind as we're hearing this, but you're gonna love this episode. So Vanessa, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Walter. I really appreciate it. I'm really proud of you as well for starting this and get going on it. So it's nice to see it.
Oh, cool. Well, and not many people know this, but we've had this conversation for a long time. We've been wanting to do this for quite a while. And It's interesting how life happens, because since the initial conversation, I know that there's a lot of things, great things that have happened in your life and in mine. And it's just so cool that the timing is now. And I'm excited for what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of remember like that year ago sitting back in Joey's, like having this initial conversation, and I'm really grateful to be here today, just like seeing everything kind of come through to fruition. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have.
Well, I actually feel privileged a little bit too, because so we both live in Edmonton, Alberta, and I actually know you since high school. So I've had the opportunity to kind of see your life for the last 20 some years and seeing that unfold. In fact, I have a memory that in high school, they offered a psychology course or a psychology class. And I remember you taking it. And so I was kind of thinking about that. And I thought, how interesting is that? Hey, and I don't know if you did that on purpose or not, but to see that you took that class and then see you now, how your story has unfolded.
It's super cool. Thanks for bringing that memory to front, because I do remember taking that. It wasn't really where I decided that I wanted to be a psychologist, but a while back, I think it was more, I would say junior high. Like I kind of knew, I was like, I want to help people. I like talking. People always ask me for my advice or opinions. And so I definitely wanted to kind of do something in the realm of helping. And I didn't know where that looked. And psychology kind of came to the front. And when you take all those tests in high school of like, what is your career going to look like? And it really did point to psychology. And so that really decided that, okay, this is what I want to do. And this is what I want to pursue. And it became a dream and it became a passion. And to see where I am today after my years of struggling through school and education and examinations, it's really cool to sit here with you and say I am a registered psychologist.
I love it. And I'm definitely want to unpack your story a little bit, but there's another cool thing about you is that you have been an athlete. and you were a cheerleader in high school, and maybe it went back to junior high. I'm not 100%, but it actually followed you outside of high school. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's always been something that's been a thrill for me, I guess, is the sport of cheerleading. And I did start in junior high and worked my way up through high school. And then I was on an all-star team after that. And then I was on a couple other all-star teams beyond that. And then obviously COVID kind of shut some things down. I did take a break prior to COVID for about 7 years. And then I started back on an all adult team. So it was fun. It was fun to get back involved. I think my body's a little bit breaking now. My chiropractor is making a lot of money off of me, but it definitely was worth it. And I did actually decide this year was going to be my last year. As of December 23. So yeah, I kind of just really thought that, you know what, end of an era and start of something new. And I really want to focus on some other kind of health things, which we'll get into as well.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit transparent here and tell you, I don't know if you know this, Vanessa, but like in high school, so wrestling was my sport, and a lot of the audience know this, but in grade 11, I actually tried out for the cheerleading team. Going into grade 11, and I didn't commit to it, and I think it was because I wanted to focus on wrestling, and who knows whatever else was in my mind then. But I want to give you props about something here, because that tryout, I know it was over a couple 2-3 days or whatever it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I don't think people realize what it takes to actually do that sport. Yeah. And so I wanted to give you props in the fact that you're still doing it and that you committed to it. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. It's definitely challenging. It's effort. It's, breaking your body, people falling on you, catching people, like, jumping, putting your legs in positions that you never thought would be. And so it's definitely it's a good sport, keeps me active. I did coach for a bit as well. So it's been fun. It's been a good journey for me. And yeah, I remember you being in wrestling. My sister was also in wrestling at the time. So I think that's actually kind of how we met, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so that's amazing. It's such a small world, and it's amazing to follow people. And I think that's the love of social media these days, is that you actually get to follow people and check in, and you don't always have to talk every day, but it's like, hey, you're doing this. Like, how can I support you in that thing? And I want to support you in your podcast, and you want to support me in my business, right? So let's help each other out.
I love your attitude. And I mean, you're saying help each other out, and you've already alluded to that in your desire from back in junior high, that you wanted to help people out. And you talk about you coached in cheerleading, and what way to help somebody out. But in coaching, when you're able to give them the knowledge and the wisdom that you have and make them a better athlete. And then I can see that connecting into what you're doing today, 100%, right? So I'd love to know a little bit about how your story unfolded and how we ended up here today, because you've had an interesting story. And like I said, I've been blessed to follow it along, and you've inspired me, and it's been really neat. But how has that journey been?
It's been one of the best and one of the worst. So thank you for kind of alluding to that. And I want to just point out, you actually just mentioned that that I've inspired you. And I actually just started a book recently, my own kind of personal journal called The Bucket List. And one of the items in there was to inspire somebody. So I actually get to check that off today. So I really am so thankful for that. So thank you. My journey started back, obviously going to university. I first went to kind of Concordia University in Edmonton here, and I did I was working on my Bachelor of Arts at the time, of course. So I had done like a few kind of, had taken it a while to do my Bachelor of Arts. And then I transitioned to U of A after that and did 2 more years. So I have actually a Bachelor of Arts both from Concordia and from U of A. So that was a long haul. And then I ended up doing my master's of counseling psychology at Athabasca University. So I did it all distance and online, which was really cool. So I got to meet people from all over the world, which was really neat. There was a point where we also met up in Calgary for a 3-week kind of summer institute where I got to actually meet those people from all over the world. And now I have friends in like Kitchener. I have friends in BC. I have friends in Saskatoon. So it's really cool. And to be able to connect. So that was probably one of my favorite parts, was to connect with people all over Canada. And there was also someone from Ireland at one point. So yeah, really neat. So that journey was pretty good. I can't lie. That was actually like one of my favorite points. Then it became like, after my master's, I had a really hard time kind of starting out. I found a job, I got hired. I didn't really get any clients. They weren't kind of helping me out. I ended up getting fired after 3 months, which I found was like interesting because it was right before the 3-month mark. And I literally wasn't able to showcase anything that I had. So that was a struggle. So at that point, I was a registered provisional psychologist. In the meantime, I was kind of starting out studying for my licensing exam, which the licensing exam is called the EPPP. It's the examination for professional practice of psychology. It's 225 multiple choice questions, and you need a scaled score of 500. So you have to write this in about 4 hours and 15 minutes. So that's the time that you're allotted. So in the meantime, I started studying for this. I then also went through another job that I got fired at, which really affected my mental health. And I was like, what am I doing? The one key point in that was that I wasn't compassionate enough. And it was something that really jogged me. And it jogged me for a while. And I really held this true to my heart, being like, I don't see it. But I really started to explore, and because it was something that clients had told me that I have been, is compassionate. So I really struggled with this, and to have a seniority person tell me that, I did struggle for a long time, and that kind of inhibited my mental health for quite some time. And then I ended up getting another job working in an industry, public health. It was amazing. It treated me very well. It helped me. It supported me through the EPPP process. And I've had a lot of struggles with the EPPP, but really good, points where in my workplace really validated that I was compassionate and that I was in the right position and that I was doing what I was meant to do as a psychologist. So that was kind of where my journey is. And I'll allude to that probably a bit more as we continue. But that was really the start of my psychology career, was getting fired from 2 jobs and starting at one that actually saw my worth.
Wow, that is that is packed up, and it makes a lot of sense now in some of the things that you have shared with me in the past. And so I'm intrigued here a little bit, because sometimes, I love to talk about maximizing your potential and personal growth and leadership. And please tell me what you think about this. Do you think some of your athlete mindset helped you along the way after high school? If it didn't, what was it? Is it the way you grew up that kind of helped you? Because to me, you come across like a very dedicated individual. And you had, along the way, reasons to possibly say, okay, I'm going to throw the towel in. I'm done.
Yeah.
What do you allude to that? Like, what, that tenacity that you have, like, where did that come from?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people will say that. They're like, Vanessa, you're really dedicated, you're diligent, you've persevered, you're so strong in how you've overcome this. And I think it's some maybe of the past. I think more family really was like my biggest drive, was, the dedication that my family committed to me. And I think I just committed to myself. I think I really invested in my self-worth, knowing my drive to achieve something. And along the way, I did realize that, with amounts of therapy that I've done personally that I really realized that I have a core belief, and my core belief is I'm a failure. And I was like, I cannot fail at this. I think out in the world, we all seek other people's validation. And it was something that I think I was constantly seeking people's validation in the industry that I was in, because the two people that first hired me in the industry invalidated that. And so it was something that I sought validation. And then when I started doing therapy and like doing this for myself, I really realized that I had to start validating myself. The only person that can push me forward was me. And I had the support of my family and friends, but it was really me that had to make the decision that you need to do this no matter the death of you that it comes to, you're going to do this. And I think I have a really good story in turning, failure into success.
I love that you mentioned validation, because that is something that I struggled with in my life. Back in high school, coming out of high school, I had some stepdad issues in my life. And I say all that because throughout most of my life, in the last 20 years or so, I've held on to that, I did hold on to that. And a lot of the time it's because I was trying to validate, I wanted to impress him. I wanted to make sure that he was proud, even though it was a bit twisted. I didn't really care what he thought. But what I find that interesting is because I see your passion come out in what you do. But what you pointed out, it almost makes me think that we need to also be careful what fuels our passion, because sometimes it could be bad motives, wrong motives that can fuel that passion. And for so long, I was trying to, get his validation or other people, like you have so beautifully put. And then you forget, like, wait, no, I got my own dreams. I have my own life and my own reasons of why I need to pursue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was always looking for approval. And I think, growing up, there was times when I was called an idiot or put down or criticized. And I think that really was my driver to be like, I'm actually super smart. Like I'm knowledgeable, I'm educated, but it also took me a really long time to realize that. And in the EPPP process, I'll kind of just make note that I failed 9 times. I failed 9 times and I passed on my 10th time. And those 9 times brought out so much in me and so much of my insecurities about being an idiot that it really, like I've struggled. I've struggled mentally to work and push past that and really start to be like, no, Vanessa, you need to trust your judgment, right? And that's that internal validation. And
Right.
And I needed to be proud of myself instead of seeking approval for somebody else to be proud of me or someone else to say, hey, I'm really proud of you. Even though people were, I think it wasn't coming from the people that I wanted or that I was seeking it from. And when those things happen now, I hold them with all my heart. So I can understand what you're saying. It's seeking that someone else's approval, but that can drive us to do all the wrong things. And it's that one shift in mentality that can make the world of difference.
There's a warning here, hey, as I hear you talk, the power of other people's opinions, their voices, whatever, their thoughts, how when we let those come in, we end up internalizing that. And then we end up doing that as a replay later on, as you experienced, as you're going through your exams. Now you're remembering these things that other people have said, and you're thinking, is that true? Or whatever, right? And so it's very important to be very careful on who we let in, right?
100%. Yeah, I think it's a matter of, you got to filter, right? It's that I get to choose. A lot of people feel a big loss of control. And I think that was me when I went to go write the exam. I had a big loss of control and I was the most anxious I think I've ever been. I think the first couple exams, I almost had a panic attack waiting for them to like call my name into the room. And it was like copious amounts of like overwhelming anxiety and uncontrollable. And I think a lot of people feel this in their day-to-day living, unfortunately. And it is about, okay, now, Because that's what are people going to think of me? That anxiety comes from like, how are people going to judge? How are people going to look at me differently? And I really had to realize that, how am I looking at myself? Because I had a really negative view of myself at the time writing this, being like, why am I failing? Like, I know the material, I know this stuff, but I keep failing. And what does this mean? And then I internalized that as like, to make it my being. Right. That if I'm a failure, how am I supposed to succeed at anything? And then, what kind of jogged me. And I think COVID, as much as I hate talking about it, it did have a really big impact on my life. COVID was when I actually started my business. It's when I actually became financially stable. I was able to save. I was able to work on myself. I was actually the most fit I've been in my entire life. And so there was a lot of changes that came from that, because I felt like I took control during that time when the situation was a massive loss of control.
So at some point because to me, looking now back, it didn't look like you were going to quit at all. You were going to figure this out and go through it. But did it ever cross your mind at some point going, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to have to think of something else, go back to school, reach my dream? Did that ever cross your mind? And I don't want to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like more times than I can even count. I questioned my integrity. I felt like my integrity was being questioned every time I did this exam. I questioned the profession. I questioned why this exam was needed. This exam is actually an exam brought to Canada from the States. Alberta is one of the only provinces that actually has it. There's a couple other ones that do. It is an exam that's more geared towards PhD, because there's a lot of medication and different types of things in there. So it's geared differently to then a master's program. So it is a little bit, so you're studying things that you didn't really study, to be honest, in school. I questioned myself a lot. And I think that was more between the exams of maybe 4 to 8. I think I really questioned, I'm like, what am I doing? And the amount of money that I spent on this exam, I could own a lot of things right now. My life would look differently right now. So it was an investment. It was an investment also in me. And it took me a while to also realize that this investment was me, that I was not financially paying out for this exam. I was financially investing in my future and my well-being and my business, and in the future of maybe having a family and those types of things. And but the whole mindset, it really had to do almost a 360. I couldn't wrap my head around it at first. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And for the guidance of friends, and that support, and the people who had been through this process, already as well. If it wasn't for them, I think I would have probably quit at some point. And yes, I think it was around exam 8. CAP actually changed the regulations where originally you could write it as many times as you needed. So I have a different story, because I was kind of in the in-between stages of, I had the opportunity to write it as many times as I needed. So that was the first 7. And then 8, 9, 10, CAP actually January 2023 changed the regulations that you were only allowed to write 3 times. So in that process, I was like, okay, 7, 8, 9, 8, 9, 10, I need to pass. And exam 8, I failed. I had, pretty high score. Exam 9, my score went up. And then exam 10, I was kind of like, hey, if you cannot pass this, you're going to become a CCC. And a CCC is a certified Canadian counselor. Right. And I used to also think and I want to apologize to that profession, I think now, because looking back, I actually really minimized the profession. I minimized being anything other than a registered psychologist was less than. And I think there's still a lot of psychologists that do view it differently. And I think now, after meeting up with a couple people, I met up actually with my friend in Saskatoon, who is a CCC. I met up with a friend here, who both run thriving businesses. And I was like, okay, I can do that other option. And I think I like took that pressure off of me to have this expectation that if I failed again in this third time, that I would be less than, and minimized myself. And I really took that pressure off and was like, I can still have a thriving business. I can still do me. I
Yeah.
can still be educated. I can still do all the same things I want to do in my future and do supervision for people and take on mentors and things like that.
Yeah.
But I had to shift my mindset again around this is not less than. And it wasn't until that, then I passed. So I don't know if that was the shift or if it was the less pressure. Because you know what? I honestly, from 9 to 10, I did not study much differently. I did not do much different. I think I actually studied less. I think I knew the material. I just wasn't utilizing it and applying it in the way that I foundationally knew how. And I honestly think I was holding myself back from something, and maybe it was fear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, loneliness, isolation, like what's next, the fear of the future. And I really held myself back. I'm not saying that I would have passed any earlier if my mindset changed earlier, because it's very hard to say. But that was really the shift that I had to have.
Oh my goodness, there's so many great nuggets from what you just shared. For example, like, we all need to remember that failure is not fatal. It only is if we choose to stay in that, right? And so, however you want to have that picture of failure, I mean, you could have stopped after the first exam. Well, let's be honest, and you chose not to. You learned from it, and even if the journey seemed like it was a little longer than you wanted it, it's very cool to see how you grew through that, though. And I think that's another reminder that we are allowed to pivot. Like, we're allowed to adjust along the way, learn from that. And I mean, it seems like a big part of yours challenge that you went through was like these mind games of everything, whether that was failing and what people were saying and how you felt about it, the whole thing. But it's interesting to see how, when you started bringing clarity on the big picture of why you were doing this, what this could look like if you failed or you didn't, it's neat to see how that clarity really propels you and goes, okay, no, I'm here and this is what I'm supposed to do, and I know why I want to do it, and let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't, I think it was around maybe exam 7, I was kind of questioning, and that judgment of, should I continue to do this? And then when CAP changed kind of the regulations to the 3, I was like, okay, I have to do the 3, because if I don't, I'm always going to be asking myself, what if? And if I had just went the route of CCC, I would have still been asking what if, and I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to do that to my soul and my being, because I knew that I would be 80 always asking myself, or kind of saying like, I should have done this. And 100%, when you say that pivot of like mental health, it's a pivoting of your mindset, of your persona, of your belief system, right? I had a belief system from a very young age that other routes weren't really as prestigious. And then I got this in my mind, and it didn't change until, I would say, halfway through last year, when I started meeting up with people to kind of really assess the other options. And so, I think when we can look beyond what we've been told, or what, those beliefs have been, and what other people's opinions are, we can really search from within our own stuff, right? We can really search, here's what I want to believe, because we get to choose different, right?
Yeah, 100%. I am so proud of you that you chose not to live in the what if. I think so many of us can get stuck in that. And if you're hearing this, you don't have to live in that. You can make the choice today. Vanessa just said it wonderfully, that we have a choice, and we can move from that, and we can change the story. So Vanessa, like, you're talking about mental health, and I know that was a big part of your journey, but I'm curious about something, because it seems to me like in the last number of years, I don't know, a few years, like, it's been a very dominant conversation. I'm curious to hear from you. Has that Have we always had some mental health challenges in our world, or is it more of a newer thing, or were we not aware of it from before?
Mhm. It's definitely not new. Like, I think it's just the stigma is starting to change, right? And I think COVID was like a big shift of that also. As a provisional psychologist at the time, we were allowed to work outside office. On our own. So that's why I started my company at the time, because before it was very regulated that you needed to have that. You needed to be in the facility with another psychologist at the time who was fully registered. Mental health has always been there. I think people just invalidated it, right? And I think it kind of goes back. We didn't acknowledge, it was very dismissed. Someone's anxious. Oh, you'll get over it, right? Or it'll pass, or just be strong. And this kind of goes into some of what I teach. Actually, I am a grief recovery specialist, and these are some, and that's what the Grief Recovery Institute. So I will note that. But some of the myths of grief are be strong, keep busy. It just takes time. Replace the loss, right? And some of these are just the unhelpful things that people have said and people believe. Again, being a myth is that we have misconceptions about mental health and how to recover. And when people tell you to just keep busy, and distract and avoid with all these other things, we're not acknowledging, we're not addressing, we're not accepting our mental health at that time. And, of course we try to avoid, right? We push aside or we shove down like all of our feelings. And I think now it's become more prominent that it's like, no, let's work on this. Let's address it. Mental health affects so many things that, it affects physical well-being, emotional well-being. It affects your, your care for yourself, your hygiene, things like that. And so many other things, of course, that it's something that we're starting to recognize has a massive snowball effect on how our world works. Yeah. Right. And with all the mental health diagnoses out there, to address each of them is complicated. And I think it's also difficult because I came from the public health perspective as working in that industry and then switching to private. You kind of notice the difference, right? And it's like, the public health, they need help. Like it's everyone needs help, but it is like we need help to address what's going on and to bring it to the forefront to say, hey, if we did this, all the snowball effects would benefit from it.
I love that you pointed that out, because just because we weren't fully aware of it or we weren't paying attention to it, it doesn't mean it hasn't always been there. Yeah. Like I'm thinking about, growing up in the 90s, thinking about our parents and I come from Central America, and there's a different mindset of coming to a new country and all that. But like, I know my parents had a different way of looking at that. And I grew up in a household where, you hide your feelings, you don't express them, and all that. And so it's interesting for me to look back and going, no, there was help could have always been used back then too. It just that we weren't willing to pay attention to it or didn't know how to ask for help. But would you agree with that?
Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that. Yes. I think the willingness to say I need help. I like that was something that I majorly learned in this process of the exam as well, was like, I need help, right? Whether that was personal, therapy help from, my parents watching my dog while I studied, or, my partner supporting me in doing more of the household things while I studied, or taking on more of the responsibilities, or, hey, can you just come bring me a coffee? Or, hey, I just need a hug. Just asking for that help and that support. And, there was friends that offered to actually study with me, even though they had already passed the exam. And I felt bad. And that's actually one of the other myths of grief as well, is don't feel bad. And it's like, but I did. I felt bad because this exam was trauma for me. And I'm like, why would someone want to help me in that traumatic kind of stage that I was in at that point. And it was just like, when I realized that I can ask for help, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's sit down, let's study together, let's do something different. And that's kind of something I always share with my clients is, what would you prefer? Something different, better, or more? What is that for you, right? And in that, what do you need from that? Because a lot of people don't know what they need. So I think that's it's a pivotal moment in changing your mindset when you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And that's going to answer a lot of questions, because a lot of it is just, might be closeness. It might be that hug. It might be that it's something personal, right? Not,
Yeah.
I need validation from other people. No, let's validate self in that.
Yeah. Be brave enough to ask the questions, because that'll open up so many things for you to discover about yourself. I do want to come back to this asking for help, but I want to ask, I mean, it looks like you've taken a specific interest in grief and trauma.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more? Was that because of your story a little bit, or is that something that you just have felt very drawn to? Yeah, why don't you share a bit?
Yeah, thank you. Grief and trauma, it's always been my jam. To use it lightly. It's something that, like, I've experienced a lot of grief in my life. Grief can extend from anything from, obviously the death of a human or a pet, to anything from like moving, loss of trust, loss of independence. So the tangible and intangible losses. It doesn't just have to be a person, right? And I think people, we were made to believe, or society makes us think, that death is just grief, right? That I can only experience these feelings of grief from death. And that's not true. And I think when you realize and you kind of go through your narrative of your history and your past, you're going to notice that there's been a lot more losses, even like school ending, right? Graduating and me finding a new job, or quitting a job, or a relationship ending, and those things, those are a loss. It's all grief. And grief comes from the feelings of hurt and pain. And it's, everyone experiences grief. There's not one person that has not experienced grief to some extent. Right. And then trauma involves grief. So I feel like they come together in that regard, where trauma is just something that I've really had a passion for. I, as a psychologist, really like dealing with the root of the problem. We always see, family tree. A tree has the roots, and in that we have stuff, right? And that's the hidden stuff. And I like to get to that. I think if we're just healing surface level, we're not really healing. We're just masking. And I really like to get to the root of the problem, and let's solve that. It might take us longer in therapy, but in the long run, we're going to be better off.
Wow. So I was one of those people that associated grief with death. Like, I got to be honest and transparent about that. And it was interesting as I reflected on my life a bit and started learning more about this, and realized, actually, yeah, I've had some grief in my life. An example would be I moved out of my home when I was in high school at a younger age. And for the longest time, I thought that my childhood was kind of stolen from me a bit, because I had to grow up a lot quicker. That was an example. And then fast forward, and I think you're aware of this, Vanessa, that one of my kids has a rare disease, a rare liver disease. And there's been so much that has unpacked through that. And I have to be honest, I probably haven't dealt with it. I mean, there's been a lot of growth in this past year for me, but for the longest time, I was holding on to this, and I'm realizing that, oh my goodness, not having a healthy child, and the energy and the time and the money and everything that goes with that, there's so much lost in that. And I didn't realize that. And when I came to myself and said, okay, I got to be honest, I'm not okay with this, and made kind of a list, wow, the freedom started kind of coming into that.
I love that you mentioned that. And thank you for sharing part of your story, because I think that's huge in processing it, right? Like I've been sharing a lot of my mental health struggles, and not a lot of people know about this, right? This is stuff that like sometimes I don't even share with people, and now it's out in the world, right? And so I appreciate you sharing yours, because it's about processing. And sometimes that one thing that we hear from people is like, that's what I needed, right? So when we kind of go back to like, that's what I need, or what do I need? It's really assessing. I needed to sit with, right? I needed to accept. I needed to be present in my stuff, so to speak, and in my grief, to be able to acknowledge it, to be able to accept it. And it's so powerful, right? And I love that word, that it's liberating to acknowledge and to address what comes from within, and where you're at.
Mm. You used another word earlier on. You said masking, and I find that very interesting as well. Um, would you be able to maybe point out some things? Because I think that I was one of these guys, one of these people that I masked my pain. I masked my willingness to ask for help, because I thought, oh no, like I'm supposed to be strong. I'm a man,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But what are some ways that people can mask these opportunities to asking for help? Can you give us a couple of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with masking can come in like different forms, of course, right? We kind of put on this front, and going back to some of the grief stuff from the Grief Recovery Handbook, it is the notes on approval, that we want the approval of others, that things are going to be fine, or that you're okay. So we kind of say like, I'm fine, right? I'm good. I'll get through, right? It'll pass.
Right.
Or, I'll meet someone else. Or we try to say these intellectual comments that just make us feel better, but we're not really taking responsibility, right? We're not taking responsibility of our reaction to the loss. And I think it's when we take that 1% responsibility, saying that this loss has happened to me.
Yeah.
Here's my response to it, and I'm going to take responsibility for that loss. So I can sit in bed all day, or I can go out and do something different, better or more. And that's what I like to say in that process, is that what am I going to do differently today, so that I don't keep masking? Because that mask can come in so many different forms of staying in bed, keeping busy, replacing the loss. There's so many different kind of components to that, but I think it's like huge to just kind of sit with and acknowledge that here's my response and here's my reaction to it, and I'm going to take responsibility for that.
So I'm kind of wondering here, and because asking for help, I mean, it takes courage. It's hard work. So first of all, specifically from a male perspective, some of the friends that I've had throughout the year, guys can build this macho man mentality, and we don't ask for help. Have you noticed at all the difference? And correct me if I'm wrong. Do you find that women ask for help a lot easier? They seek it, or do men struggle with that? What do you think?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I think it's a good question, I think, in the regards of exploring this, but I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like equal components or not, but I think everyone, kind of depending on your history and past of, were you allowed to ask for help when you were young, right? Or what happened when you asked for help, or you expressed? Were you dismissed? Were you shut down? Were you invalidated? Asking for help is really vulnerable. And I love that you keep saying like it takes kind of courage and bravery. And I know maybe you know Brene Brown, right? That's her research is on
That's right.
vulnerability and courage and bravery, right? And and shame. Right. So she talks about shame a lot. And I think it's really important, because are we shamed when we ask for help, or do we feel ashamed when we ask for help?
Yeah.
And I think it's just the feelings associated with what we're doing at that point. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that can be so powerful in and of itself, is that, and she has a book I've read, but The Power of Vulnerability.
Right.
It's how do we perceive that? We can either be powerful in vulnerability and letting our guard down by doing this thing, or we have power and vulnerability by shame, embarrassment, and humiliation, right?
Mm.
And I think that's like really important to kind of note in how we ask for help.
I love that you painted that beautiful picture about it really comes down to what we believe, how we grew up, the different things that affect our life. And it's not that simple. And I'm thank you for clarifying that because
Mhm.
it is true. We all have different stories and it's all about how we've reacted to it and what we did about it. And so I love that idea that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of wisdom.
Yeah,
And I hope people can hear that because you're not you're not being weak and less than because you're asking for help. So
exactly.
help me out here. And how do we ask for help? Because you've mentioned different barriers
Yeah.
that play a role in this. So how could one start this journey out?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Definitely, I do offer kind of a 10-minute free consult. I want to make sure that we're a right fit, right, for my clients. I think it's really important that because I know it's expensive. I'm going to throw that out there. I get that therapy is expensive. There's a reason to why it's very expensive. All the education that goes behind it, and it's a very skilled profession. Hopefully that if people have benefits, I highly suggest that you use your benefits in that process. I can direct bill a few companies as well. So that's always a benefit for people.
Yep.
Or you pay up front and then submit to your benefits. But just offering that free consult really helps alleviate some of that tension and stress for people as well, where it's more like, hey, let's just have a conversation. What are you looking for? Maybe they have no idea. And then I kind of like let them know what my services are, how I work, my personality, how I am in therapy with people. I think people want to know that. So it gives you a little bit preamble, right? There's a lot on my website, of course, but it's more of a preamble. So you just give me a call, shoot me an email, and we can kind of set up a quick 10-minute consult. If you decide that you just want to book and get in right away, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Heading to my website, www.pearlpsychological.com, or sending me an email, which all of that information as well is on my website. I do online as well. So I am doing online therapy for all across Alberta. So my jurisdiction is Alberta. I can also see clients online in Nunavut and New Brunswick. So those are a couple options as well for people that might live out of town. So there's some things there. I also run a grief recovery support group. So that's something that, again, is my passion. I'm currently starting one as of next week. I do have a couple more slots left in that one. But up until then, check out my website. If it's of interest for you, give me a call. Or send me an email, and I would love to have a chat with you and even just get you started. If I'm not the right fit for you, I would love to be able to direct you to someone that might be of a better fit. So,
And as a reminder, we will add all your contact information into the notes, so
perfect.
everybody will be able to have access to that. But and I want people to support you. I love what you're doing. You know that I'm a fan. So I got a question though. Um, what for? There's somebody listening to this right now and goes, "Oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to contact her because I just feel uncomfortable." And then you did bring in that financial barrier. That's a possibility. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Are people like, is hope all lost if somebody feels like they're not ready to seek professional help? Is there also other things that they can start doing that might get them started on the journey, and then down the line, of course, lead them to you or any professional? Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that up because there is a cycle. It's called the stages of change, and we kind of run through sometimes that pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and then maintenance. So those are the 5 stages. And so even checking out those stages, the long name of it is the Trans Theoretical Model of Stages of Change, or just Google Stages of Change. But you might kind of figure out where you're at, and you might say, you know what, I'm kind of in that contemplating right now, right? I'm in maybe like 6 months. In 6 months, I'll kind of get help and kind of see where I'm at. Yeah. Again, asking yourself that question of like, what do you want? Something different, better, or more? If you were to look into that crystal ball and you were to see what your life, you were to wake up tomorrow and all your hopes and dreams came true, what would that be? And it's like, let's reach out, because we can't. Sometimes we're our own worst enemies. And I know that in that exam process, I was holding myself back a lot from what could have been. And, it was isolating. It was lonely. And I think, looking back and I'm like, okay, I did the things, but there could have been things differently. So again, just kind of reassessing, like if I was to look at myself in 2 years, 5 years, where would I want to see myself? And is there going to be doubt and self-doubt that I didn't ask for help? And I wish I would have asked for help. We're going to grieve the loss, first of all, of wishing that we had asked, that we had reached out for help earlier. And we're also going to feel probably shame about not reaching out. So might as well take that step, but really asking yourself, like, what is it that I really want? And am I going to wish that I did something different, better, or more in the future?
I love that you say that. That is such an encouragement. I know people are going to find a lot of value in that. I know that you are an advocate of reading books and you personal growth, and so am I. And that's an encouragement too. Like sometimes we just maybe go grab a good book. We go listen to somebody out there that is talking on the topic or on the whatever challenge you're going through. And I mean, you have also been a great example of surrounding yourself with good people that will encourage you and push you on as you get started, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, and even if too, like if you want to reach out, not even for a therapy session, but if you're looking for, what's like some really good books, or I mentioned Brené Brown, there's some other really good books on like boundaries and things like that. I've got a list, right? So if ever needed, people can always just reach out just for that. Hey, here's what, and maybe that might inspire you. Again, going back to that inspiring, that I'm hoping that today, something that I've said has been able to inspire people to be like, and to really reflect and kind of look inwards and assess, what do I need right now? And where do I see myself in the future and stuff like that. So really just looking inside and loving that person from within.
You've said so many good things in all that and the whole time together here. Is there a thought, an idea, or like one piece of advice that you definitely want people to take away today and carry with them?
Oh, big question. I think it's important. Like, I love your name change of the podcast of like, It Matters. And I think I came into this podcast today kind of with the mindset of mental health matters. And it's really important to kind of check in with yourself. So if there's one thing that I would say, it would be to just check in with yourself, see where you're at, see what you might be struggling with, or do I have some anxiety, or, this is, I think Blue Monday was just on Monday, and it's a very depressive time of the year, and weather and all of that jazz. So it's really like looking at all of these factors and really saying, is there something that I could do differently, and what am I in control of? I think that's a big piece here. I have a choice. So what am I in control of? I'm not in control of the weather, maybe my surroundings, maybe my work environment, or other things, my family situation. But what am I in control of? And take that one piece that you're in control of and run with it.
Great advice. This is to all of you. It doesn't matter in what industry, arena, profession you work in. It is okay to ask for help. It's okay to stop, take a time out, assess, and just really Vanessa has really given us such a wealth of wisdom today that will allow us to just get better. I really do believe that. So Vanessa, like, we can step outside of your profession for a moment. Is there something you're excited about? But like, what matters to you right now?
Yeah, I love that question. What matters to me right now is honestly self-care. I know that people kind of question sometimes what that word is. And for me right now, I completely last year was so focused on the EPPP and passing that I let my health go. I let my physical health go. I let some of my mental health go. And I think at this point, self-care for me is just so important. So just eating healthy. I'm doing dry January. I am just really recentering and refocusing on me. I've, incorporated a lot more yoga into my life right now, some mindfulness practices. I have started just walking more, working out, really focusing back on me and what makes me happy. That's what matters to me right now. It's just my big focus is to just get back to that level of like, oomph that I know is in here. It's just been masked for the past year, and it's unmasking that happiness again.
Wow, what a great way to really wrap our time together with the encouragement of self-care. For real, I think we all need some work in that, even if you already do it, figuring out other ways to continue to energize yourself to things that give you life and really purpose and passion. I love that you are, that's what matters to you right now. And Vanessa, this has been so good. I want to tell you, I appreciate your vulnerability. I respect you a lot and your journey and what you're doing today. And not only do I think that this podcast is going to impact a lot of people with your story, but as you continue on working in your business and everything else that's in store in that, I am super excited for what you're doing, and I just want to thank you for just taking time and sharing.
Thank you so much, Walter. I really appreciate it. You've been really inspiring for me and everything that you've gone through in your life as well, and everything that you've shared. I really appreciate it. You're super down to earth, easy to talk to, and I wish you all the best in this podcast. I would love to come on again in the future and hopefully be able to talk about more things. It would be great for people to also even send to you maybe topics that they would like to talk about in the future, maybe what's on people's mind, because as you noted, mental health has been around for a long time, and it's about let's address some of these things. So that might be really helpful and beneficial in the future. And if anything, reach out. I'm always here. I want to help.
Awesome. Well, there you heard it, everybody. If you have a topic on mind, you have things that you would like us to cover in the future, uh, communicate with us, get in contact and connect so we can know this stuff. And yes, of course, I would love to have you back in the future. And this has been so good. So thank you for hanging out, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
Amazing. Thank you.
And for everybody out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Ed Matters podcast. And I want to encourage you, like always, to dream big, grow always, and lead well. Bye for now.